Welcome to a journey through Australia's most haunted and abandoned hospitals, where the walls whisper of madness and the shadows seem to move on their own. In these forgotten places, the echoes of the past still linger, and the spirits of those long lost are said to roam the halls. Are you ready to explore the dark secrets of these ghostly sites? Let's dive into the chilling world of haunted asylums in Australia. Lindeme Mental Asylum in Bundoora, Victoria, still stands in eerie silence, its decaying halls whispering of madness long past. Once teeming with patients suffering from severe mental illnesses, Lindeme is now nothing more than a husk of a building. But not everything that resided within those walls has left. Locals speak of shadows that flit across broken windows and of eerie whispers that echo through the halls. Security guards report strange footsteps following them, though no one else is present. The atmosphere grows heavier as you move deeper into the asylum, like a suffocating presence wrapping around you. It is said that the souls of the most tormented patients never truly left Lindeme. The unlucky few who dare to enter after dark sometimes hear the faint clinking of chains dragging along the floor, and if you're quiet, you might catch a glimpse of ghostly figures lurking in the corners of your vision, silent witnesses to the horrors that transpired within. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, Mayday Hills Hospital in Victoria, is infamous for the chilling energy that clings to its walls. Over 3,000 patients died here during its operation, and many believe their spirits never left. Visitors often speak of cold spots that send shivers down the spine, even in the height of summer. Some have seen the apparition of a woman in a hospital gown, wandering the grounds aimlessly, searching for something, or someone, that eludes her in death as it did in life. The most unsettling of all, though, are the sudden bursts of laughter, sharp and cruel, that echo through the empty corridors. It's said to belong to the spirit of an infamous nurse who delighted in the suffering of the patients under her care. Late at night, the sounds of heavy doors slamming shut can be heard, but when you follow the noise, the halls remain empty and still. But is it really just the wind? Lindeme Mental Hospital in Ararat, Victoria, is one of the largest and most haunted asylums in Australia. During its operational years, over 13,000 patients passed away within its walls, many of them victims of inhumane treatments. As you step into Ararat, it feels as though the building itself breathes, and every creak of the floorboards seems to be in time with your heartbeat. Visitors often feel an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they are not alone. The spirit of Nurse Carrie is often spotted wandering the women's ward, her face twisted in anguish. But it's the men's wing that instills the most fear. People have reported seeing dark figures standing at the end of hallways, only to disappear as they get closer. The feeling of being watched is almost unbearable. They say that once you enter Ararat, you can feel the weight of those lost souls pressing down on you, as if they are trying to pull you into their eternal torment. Gladesville Mental Hospital in New South Wales carries with it a sinister reputation. It was here that some of the most brutal psychiatric treatments were carried out, and it is said that the spirits of the patients who died never found peace. Visitors to the site have reported hearing moans and cries echoing through the ruins, as if the building itself remembers the pain. The most terrifying reports come from those who have seen full-body apparitions of former patients, their faces contorted in agony, begging for release from the endless suffering of their afterlife. Cold spots appear out of nowhere, and the temperature seems to drop as soon as you step onto the grounds. The asylum's basement, where many of the most unspeakable experiments were conducted, is the most haunted. Brave souls who dare venture there often report feelings of intense fear, and some claim to have been pushed by invisible hands. Kalen Park Hospital for the Insane in Rozelle, New South Wales, hides its horrors behind a beautiful facade. This sprawling estate, with its grand Victorian architecture, once housed thousands of mentally ill patients, many of whom never left. The spirits that remain here are not at peace. Shadows move on their own, doors creak open and slam shut violently, and strange, disembodied voices are heard late at night. One of the most notorious spirits is that of a young girl who was said to have died after a botched lobotomy. She's often seen wandering the gardens, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if still suffering from the effects of the brutal procedure. The air around Kalen Park feels thick, oppressive, as if the very grounds are saturated with sorrow and despair. People who stay too long often complain of headaches, nausea, and a deep, unshakable sadness, as if the asylum is trying to claim them too. Woogu Mental Asylum, Willsmere Hospital, in Victoria, stands as a stark reminder of the horrors of psychiatric care in the 19th century. This imposing building housed thousands of patients, many of whom were abandoned by their families. The spirits here are restless. People have reported hearing loud banging noises coming from rooms that have been sealed for decades. Lights flicker on and off, and strange, heavy footsteps echo through the corridors. Some have seen the ghost of a man dressed in an old-fashioned patient's gown, staring blankly out of the windows. It's said that he's looking for his family, who never came to visit him after they left him here. The air inside Willsmere is cold, no matter the season, and visitors often feel an overwhelming sense of isolation, as if the building itself is trapping them within its walls, just as it did to its former patients. Kenmore Psychiatric Hospital in Goulburn, New South Wales sits abandoned, yet the echo of its tragic past remains. Once a place of supposed healing, Kenmore became a nightmare for many of its patients. The spirits that haunt its halls are not kind. People who have visited the derelict hospital have reported hearing blood-curdling screams in the dead of night, even though the buildings have been empty for years. Some claim to have seen ghostly figures staring out of the broken windows, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. The most chilling encounters, however, are with the Whispering Man, a shadowy figure who follows visitors around the grounds, whispering unintelligible words in their ears before disappearing into the darkness. His presence brings a cold, paralyzing fear, as though he's trying to lure the living into his world of eternal madness. Royal Derwent Hospital, Willow Court Asylum in New Norfolk, Tasmania, is infamous for the inhumane conditions its patients endured. Visitors to the abandoned site speak of a heavy, oppressive atmosphere that makes it hard to breathe. The ghosts of former patients are said to roam the corridors, their tortured souls forever trapped within the asylum's crumbling walls. One of the most disturbing reports is of a shadowy figure seen dragging chains along the floor, accompanied by the faint sound of weeping. People who visit the hospital often report an overwhelming feeling of sadness and despair, as if they are being watched by countless unseen eyes. Electrical devices malfunction, strange cold drafts sweep through the rooms, and eerie whispers echo from the darkness. Some say that once you step foot in Willow Court, the spirits that dwell within will follow you long after you leave. Royal Adelaide Hospital, Old Building, is a place where life and death walked hand in hand for over a century. Now, in its decayed state, the line between the two has blurred. This hospital has seen countless deaths, and many of those souls have refused to move on. Visitors report seeing shadowy figures darting down the corridors, only to vanish when pursued. The most unnerving sight is the Grey Nurse, a spirit who appears in a long, old-fashioned nursing uniform, her face obscured. She's seen silently checking on patients that no longer exist. It's said that her appearance is a bad omen, often followed by feelings of extreme dread and even physical illness. The basement, where many autopsies were performed, is a hotspot for paranormal activity. Doors slam shut, lights flicker, and cold hands seem to brush against those who dare to enter. Quarantine Station, North Head in Manly, New South Wales, is a site drenched in death and despair. For over a century, it was where the sick were sent to live out their final days in isolation. The spirits of those who died here are said to linger, unable to leave the place where they suffered so greatly. Guests who stay in the old quarantine buildings often hear the sound of coughing, as if the patients are still battling the diseases that claimed their lives. Disembodied footsteps follow visitors down the hallways, and ghostly apparitions have been seen wandering the grounds, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, their faces gaunt and sunken. The energy at the quarantine station is palpable. Some say the spirits here are angry, bitter about the suffering they endured in life, and they make their presence known in terrifying ways. Mont Asylum in McLeod, Victoria, is one of the most unnerving places you can visit. Its decaying buildings, covered in graffiti, give little hint of the darkness that lurks within. People who venture inside often report feelings of being watched, even when they are completely alone. Some have seen the flicker of lights in rooms that have no power, and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. There's a particular room, deep within the asylum, where people feel an inexplicable chill, so cold that it can be felt even in the hottest of summers. It's said that this room was where some of the worst atrocities were committed, and the spirits of those who suffered there remain trapped. Visitors have reported hearing the faint sound of crying, but no one is ever there when they investigate. It's a place that feels alive with the presence of the dead. Sunbury Lunatic Asylum in Victoria is a place that seems to have absorbed the madness of its former residents. The very air around the asylum feels thick with unease, and strange things happen here all the time. Visitors often report hearing strange sounds, moans, whispers, even screams, coming from the empty buildings. There are frequent sightings of shadow figures darting from room to room, and the feeling of being watched is almost unbearable. One of the most disturbing spirits is that of a young boy who is often seen running through the halls, only to disappear around corners. Those who encounter him often report feeling a wave of sadness, as if the boy's spirit is trapped, searching for someone or something that can never be found. The asylum itself seems to exude a malevolent energy, as if it resents the intrusion of the living into its haunted halls. Woogu Asylum in Brisbane, Queensland, holds a dark history of mistreatment and suffering. The spirits of those who died here are said to still roam the grounds, trapped by the horrors they experienced in life. People who have visited the site speak of strange occurrences, doors slamming shut on their own, lights flickering, and the unsettling feeling of being followed. Some have seen ghostly figures staring out of the windows, their faces twisted in pain. The most chilling reports are of a woman in white who wanders the halls, her eyes vacant and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. Those who encounter her are filled with an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the asylum itself is warning them to leave before it's too late. The energy in Woogu is heavy, oppressive, and those who visit often leave feeling as though they've been touched by something not of this world. Fremantle Lunatic Asylum in Western Australia is one of the most notoriously haunted places in the country. The asylum saw thousands of patients pass through its doors, many of whom suffered terribly from both their illnesses and the treatments they received. Visitors today report seeing ghostly apparitions in the hallways and hearing the sound of chains rattling, as if the spirits of former patients are still bound in their torment. Some people claim to have seen the figure of a nurse walking the halls, her face obscured by shadows, and a heavy feeling of dread follows her wherever she goes. The building itself seems to creak and groan under the weight of its tragic history, and those who visit often report feeling an overwhelming sense of sadness and despair, as if the asylum is trying to claim their souls, just as it did to so many before them. Zard, Glenside Mental Hospital in Adelaide, South Australia, is a place of nightmares. This section of the hospital housed the criminally insane, and the spirits of those who died here are far from peaceful. The building exudes an air of menace, as if it's still holding on to the rage and madness of its former residents. People who have ventured inside report hearing disembodied voices, the sound of doors slamming shut on their own, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. Some have even claimed to see the ghostly figure of a man in a straitjacket, pacing the halls, his eyes wild with fury. The temperature in the Z ward often drops suddenly, and cold drafts sweep through the rooms, even in the height of summer. It's a place where the line between the living and the dead feels dangerously thin, and those who stay too long may find themselves drawn into the madness that still lingers within its walls. From eerie footsteps to ghostly apparitions, these haunted hospitals have left their mark on those brave enough to visit. The spirits of the past seem to have no intention of leaving, and the mystery of what really happened within these walls may never be fully uncovered. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this dark dive into Australia's haunted history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, stay curious and stay brave.